Have you ever wished that you could change the world? If you consider the events in Syria or Egypt or Israel, Afghanistan, the wide threats to peace in the world, or the violence and destruction that so frequently occurs out there in any place, you would say that any wish to change the world is surely just a pipe dream, because it doesn't happen. And yet politicians who look like international politicians, talk like international politicians, act like international politicians, are engaged in that wish to change the world. Scientists of various scientific pursuits are engaged in that wish to change the world. Doctors and health workers, the World Health Organization, and many such bodies are engaged in that wish. Churches and religion, from the ugliest expressions of fundamentalism through to the more and the most humane expressions of care and compassion, are engaged in that same wish to change the world. And good work is done. Good work has been done. But to any casual observer, it looks like mopping up a problem on the perimeter, while the bigger problem persists, keeps jumping up in front of us. If not there, then there, then there. So what can we do? Very little. So we tend to disengage. What can we do? We can all be so busily engaged with our own peculiar and immediate concerns that we can't engage in these concerns of the wider world, whether it's in politics or science or medicine or religion or whatever. So we don't. We stand back and watch. But history has its ways of reminding us that disengagement or non-engagement can have serious consequences. Back before the Second World War, there was a very eminent preacher and pastor in Germany called Pastor Niemöller. I was fortunate enough to hear him speak at a gathering in Scotland when I was there as a student. And he said this, and I know he said it many times in other places, the same speech. He said, when Hitler attacked the Jews, I was not a Jew. Therefore, I did not speak up. When Hitler attacked the Catholics, I was not a Catholic, and therefore I didn't speak up. When Hitler attacked the communists, I was not a communist, so I didn't speak up. When Hitler attacked the unions, I was not a member of any union, so I didn't speak up. But then Hitler attacked the Protestant church and me, he said, and there was nobody left to speak up. The big world out there continually confronts us with the need for change, some changes, and the need for us to be somehow engaged. But our real world, for us, is a world of fragments. We live in different fragments. Our job, our family, our relationships, school, university, our profession, the church, religion, and so on. Fragments. You can be so engaged in your own fragment that you do not see the erosion or the sickness in other fragments that one day could affect us all in different ways. For example, if we remain adamant that we don't need to be engaged in the issue of global warming, perhaps our grandchildren will in their time wonder why we did not engage on their behalf. If we remain unmoved by the terrible plight of millions of children, not only in Syria, but in Egypt, and in Afghanistan, being uprooted from home and school, separated from their families, then perhaps the wider world will ask why our own engagements took precedence over our compassion. If you take a swift glimpse at several countries around the world, you might see that the ideas and the ideologies that once drove them are now inactive. They're now either gone or being challenged. The old colonial domination of the white man has almost gone, and with it that ideology. The purges and power of communist ideology has almost gone. Even today, the would-be dictator in whatever country, loaded with guns and bombs and germs at his control, can be brought down by one small object in anyone's pocket or handbag, the mobile phone, and photographs taken thereby can be transmitted to the world. So today, we're searching in many places, and even here in this place, we're searching for a new ideology. And although we might be much entangled with the old ideologies and we don't want to let them go, we're being challenged more and more to engage in discussions for a new ideology, as that book that Deborah read from today indicated. A new ideology in the various fragments of our public and our personal lives. For the last several years, we here at St. Michael's have been engaged somewhat in a search for a new faith. Because the old faith, not that it was needed to be knocked out entirely, but it was not speaking to us in any meaningful way in the 21st century. So we looked for a new faith, a search for a faith that would speak more rationally, more intelligently, more appropriately, more compassionately to us at our stage of who we are. The search for a new ideology is what we need to look for today. Our huge concern is that again and again we collide with the reality that we're not going to be involved in that search, because we're not too sure how we can be involved, and nor are we too sure as to who we are. Anyway, why should we do it? Who are we? Well, I'd like to put it to you that we need to look again at ourselves. At the last Sage group a couple of Fridays ago, we gathered together 80 people between the ages of 45 and 95 years of age, as we do each time we meet, reflecting on how to age successfully, more enjoyably. And I put a proposition to that group on that particular Friday that I'd already registered in myself, that the person that we have become at our current age, whether it be 50, 60, 70, 80 or what, that person is different from the person we were when we were 40 or 25 years of age. It's true, some of us have really not matured, not bothered to mature out of our infantile neurosis, if you like, or we are stuck and dominated by the same infantile demands that were on us way back there, even though we're dressing to look as if we're 60, 70, 90 years of age. Some of us, as we've aged, have become far more inflexible than we were when we were 20. Far more boring than we were when we were 20. Much more angrier than we were when we were 30, 40. Some of us have become different people. Yes, different people. And we can rejoice, I hope, in our difference, especially if that difference is that we become infectiously happy, excessively generous, joyously living out an ideology of believing in what? Believing in a miracle every day. At another group just last Thursday, it was the last meeting for the year of the kindergarten field officers, a group that I've been looking after for nearly 3 decades now, looking after their professional or helping them with their ongoing professional development of those kindergarten field officers as they themselves then help go into kindergartens to help little kids less than 5 years of age with their various behavioural, emotional, psychological problems. Last Thursday, we were focused on the way we are all influenced by forces that we don't really understand, by what goes on in our unconscious minds. I call this the story behind the story. You tell me your story, and I shall look for the story that you're not telling me, the story behind the story. For the most part, as we live in our various fragments, we don't hear that story behind the story. It remains hidden. As we hear it, if we hear it, we realise that we're not the person that we thought we were. So a few months ago, a young woman came to ask my help, and she told me that she and her family had been through 3 huge catastrophes in a very short time. She said, "I'm so damaged by what has happened. I suppose most people have had one trauma," she said, "but I've been through 3 terrible, terrible experiences. I'm no longer the person I was, and I could never be the same person again." I said to her, "You have just taken the first step toward your recovery." And she looked at me. I said, "You have said negatively, I can never be the same person again. Now I shall say it positively. You will never be the same person again. And so together we will build a new person." Here today I'm speaking about, of course, a new faith in ourselves, a new faith in life, a new faith in the future, a new faith. I'm also speaking about a new ideology that sits behind that faith, within it. A new story, the story behind the story. And I'm talking about a new human being for all of us. Back in 2009, Rebecca Solnit wrote her excellent book. It's called Paradise Built in Hell. The extraordinary communities that arise in disasters. She was writing about communities, extraordinary communities that arise in disasters. Others have written books about us, each individual. Disasters, catastrophes, terrible mishaps can leave us in a heap, and there you can remain. But then I see instance after instance where they bring out the best in us. People discover their larger self, more alive, more compassionate, more liberated, more engaged than ever before. And it's very interesting, really, and very touching, I think, that often it's the people who've been through the trauma, through the sadness and sorrow, they're the people who then want to be engaged, more engaged than they ever were before. Over the next several months, I'm sure we're going to read and hear a great deal about the victims of child sexual abuse. We'll hear about the damage that has been done, the diffuse and scattered tragedy that has been imposed on these people when they were vulnerable children. I hope that we'll also hear how some will say, "I'm no longer the victim. I am a survivor. I am a new human being. I'm not going to carry this trauma with me all my life. I'm going to discover ways to be a new human being." Now, the way to that goal is not easily found. In the damaged fragments of our life, in the troubled fragments of our life, the task remains to focus on what we will make of our lives now. Now that what has happened, what will be the focus of our lives from here on? And did you hear the scripture we read to you today? We're searching for a faith for the expansive wholeness of your soul, so that you might live life to the full. We might size up some of the dimensions of that wider task. And the dimensions are gross. Richard Eckersley, a sociologist, Australian, he noted that in a recent survey of American college students, it was found that the emotional health of those college freshmen and women had fallen in 2010, had fallen to the lowest level since the survey began in 1985. Their emotional health dropped. A similar study in Britain of adolescents found that their emotional health was at the lowest level since 1985. So we often nod, some kind of affirmation, that that's how it is with our young people, satisfied that we can live in some kind of denial of our own drop in emotional health. The drop in emotional health of people over 45. You see, we might consider how we can engage in finding new ways to our emotional health and well-being in 2013. We know this, that it is very rare to find in your workplaces people doing anything systematic to enhance the emotional health of the employees. We know that programs of emotional health are virtually non-existent in secondary and tertiary colleges and universities. They say everybody's too busy, too focused elsewhere, all the fragments. Well, we here in St. Michael's are in a unique situation. For the last 40 years, we have been deliberately engaged in this work of lifting emotional health. But what have we done? Have we only been in fragments? Well, even the fragments can be important. What does it involve? It involves gathering together in a generous, nurturing, healing community. We need more of them. It involves engaging with the various fragments where emotional health and well-being are being taught. It involves finding a positive way of joining in real celebration of the gifts of life. Because so often we're walking around with our heads bowed, looking angry and being angry, looking depressed and being depressed, and we're not connected with anybody or any group of people who help to lift us to celebrate the very gifts of life. That's why the sacrament of baptism this morning is so important, because it's a sacrament of reminding us of that connection, of the belonging of those children, of how important it is that we find a belonging that is good, that is enhancing, that at certain points and at many points will celebrate the very gift of that new life. Kenneth Taylor, in his article, urged us to be engaging in searching for what he called the better angels of our nature. He wrote this: throughout history, luminaries have referred to the better angels of our nature. What did they mean? They meant those multiple expressions of tenderness, of beauty, of positive creativity, of real transformation of people's minds and hearts. And a recent edition of The New Yorker reviews the film called Rust and Bone. Stephanie in the film faces huge challenges. She first trains killer whales to obey her commands. Then she tries to tame a man called Ali and to appeal to his inner feelings, perhaps to his inner angels, only to bump into the possibility that he may not have any. She, however, became disabled in a terrible accident, confined to a wheelchair. She disengaged from everything, shut herself in a dark room. But it was Ali, of all people, who showed her life could be lived after the crash. And the reviewer of the film wrote this: "The uncovering of tenderness in the heart of a beast is hardly a novel theme, but there it is, there it was." And Ali's CV was not a pretty one. A bouncer, a boxer, a bare-knuckle fighter, a bored security guard. Compared with Ali, your average killer whale was a pussycat. But Ali, in face of Stephanie's disablement, became a new person. Do you know what happens? So we look into the future for a moment, based on the evidence embedded in the past. What do we see? We see we are winning in some places. Around the world, there is greater access to clean water. We can celebrate that. Around the world, there is a greater percentage of kids attending secondary school. We can celebrate that. Around the world, there is greater success in keeping infants alive. Around the world, there is greater overall health of human beings. So we're winning at so many points. But we're losing. Carbon dioxide emissions, losing. Understanding the temperature of planet Earth, losing. Corruption in 15 of the largest countries of the world, we're losing. The problem of refugees around the world, not just in our zone, but around the world, we're losing. Church attendances, we're losing. So what can we do? We can change the way we think about ourselves. We can change the way we settle our interpersonal conflict and anger. We can change the way we'll be the church in this city. Only a fragment in the wide world, but it's a fragment. We can change the way of being engaged in the various fragments of our own lives. As I've already mentioned today, 52 members of our church council will go into conference to shape up the focus of St. Michael's in 2013. A new faith, a new ideology, new values, a new human story behind the story, a new human being searching for those better angels of our best human nature. Through and through, we are searchers. We're searching for that expansive wholeness that the Scriptures talked about. Searching for that expansive wholeness of your soul, where you will once again live life, really live life to the full. Would you please stand? And the blessing. Pause for the blessing. May the God you see in all the colours of creation arouse in you a sense of awe and wonder. May the God who is a sacred presence be real to you. May the God who is a source of inspiration and courage keep calling you forward. May your God go with you and bless you today and always.